to anyway. Talk about air experts. You know, we create comfort, engineer, and energy-saving heating and cooling systems. And to do that, you know, you have to approach it from an engineering standpoint, because you got to size the equipment right, and then you've got to do a good airflow, so that if you're working on a residential home, you put the right amount of air into each room so that you have comfort. And that requires running a load calculation and doing a CFM requirements for each room. You know, a lot of my competitors, this is what they use. It's called a air conditioning or heat pump sizing chart. And what they do is they stand on the opposite side of the street and they line up the home. And if it fits within this opening, it's 1.5 to 2 ton unit. If it's this, the middle one's 2.5 and 3, and if it's a large home, and it's a 4 to a 5 ton. That's just being a joke, but it does require a lot more engineering to make it comfortable. And I always say that, you know, if your home or if your building, commercial building's not comfortable, then it's a fancy barn. That's all it is. And so, you know, heating and air conditioning is really important, you know, not only for your health, but, you know, just being comfortable. And that way you can do what you need to do without worrying about, you know, being too hot or too cold. You know, we work close with the power company, and in replacement type situations, they give a rebate to homeowners. And as a contractor, I'm set up with them, and we do a fill out paperwork so that our end user customer can get a rebate. And it can range from $200 up to $1,200, depending on the size of the equipment and the efficiency of the equipment. So that's pretty good. There's some forms that we fill out. This is part of it. And if you're interested in this any more, you can get a hold of me. I'll pass around my business cards, and like to go ahead and take one, and I'll be glad to talk with you about that afterwards. You know, one product that we promote a lot, and we do all types of heating and cooling, residential and commercial, but we have a product that's pretty neat. It uses air source heat pump technology as well as ground source. And what I mean by ground source, we are circulating the refrigerant through the underground through a copper coil, and that extracts heat in the winter or rejects it in the summer. And it's a real efficient way of heating and cooling. Not only that, but we also have a solar panel that the refrigerant runs through, and it makes the compressor, when it's running, about 30% more efficient. So it's using air source technology, ground source, and solar all in one unit. We have about 3 right now, 2 under construction in the valley. Yeah, and so this is, you know, it's a lot more expensive, but it does, you can get a 30% solar rebate through the government, a tax credit. So that's something that's pretty interesting. I won't go into all the details of it, but again, it does use air source, heat pump, as well as ground source, and then the solar. So that makes it a real nice situation. Being passed out a brochure on air cleaning. Not only do we size the equipment properly, but it's real important to have your system with adequate filtration. There's an awful lot of equipment that goes in, and the filter is just not adequate for the system. You know, we promote a real high efficiency filter, but most standard filters, this is what you have. You know, you can see through it, so that tells me that it's only going to catch the big hunks of dirt and dust and things like that. It's not going to do much for your indoor air quality. Now, some people have upgraded to what they call a pleated filter, which does a little bit better. With a filter like this, once this gets matted on the surface of it, then the air is really restricted, and that causes a lot of problems with the heating and cooling, especially on cooling. If you have a clogged filter, then your unit's going to freeze up and ice over. So it's real important to keep, not only have the filter sized properly, but you know, change it on a regular basis. Now this is a 1-inch pleated filter. It does a little bit better job because it does have a little bit more surface area, but it's still probably a 30-day filter, because again, once it gets matted, then it restricts your air quite a bit. We promote a high efficiency filter like this one, about 5 inches thick, and the brochures, this is made by Scuttle Manufacturing. They're up in Marietta, Ohio. But the nice thing about this type of filter is they call it depth loading. But as your filter gets dirty, you know, if the air is going this way through it, it's going to start getting dirty and where it's right at the end of your pleat. But as it does get dirty, the air can still get around the dirt because it has such a depth to it, and that's what they call depth loading. So a filter like this could be changed maybe 3 to 6 months. If the house is real clean and everything, we can go up to 6 months without having to change this. So, and the micron size filters that or dirt that it catches, 0.1 microns. They point that out in the literature, which a dime, the thickness of a dime is 1,270 microns thick. So if that filter catches 0.1 microns, then you know it's a pretty efficient filter. And you know that's what you want, because your central heating and cooling is probably one of the best things that can improve the air quality in your home. And I always recommend leaving the fan on constantly, circulating the air around. It keeps it from air from stratifying, so it's more comfortable, and it's filtering the air 24/7. So I know in my home I have a 2-story with 2 systems, and I never turn my fans off. They are on continuously, and I have this type of filtration in it, and it does a real good job. One other product that we sent around to you, this is more for the commercial industrial market, where high bay buildings is a good heat source. It's radiant tube heat. It's fired by natural gas or propane, and for high bay buildings, this is radiant heat, so you're not blowing air around. And the principle of radiant heat is acts like the sun. You know, the sun doesn't heat the air when it comes down. The heat's released when it hits the earth. And that's basically what's happening with the radiant tube heat, is it will heat the like if it's a high bay warehouse or car dealership, it'll heat the floor first, and then the air is heated when it comes in contact with the floor, so it heats from the floor up. So with a building that's 14, 16 feet, 18 feet tall, you're not having to heat that whole volume of space to be comfortable. You're heating from the floor up maybe 8, 10 feet. So it's a much more comfortable heat as well as energy efficient. It will cut energy consumption in a warehouse, like if they were heating with forced air blower unit heaters, by at least 50%, and have the heat that you're paying for, but you know, all of it's in the ceilings. So that's another product that's very, very good energy efficient. That's about all I had. Are there any questions or anything on?
What's the life expectancy on a heat pump? How many years?
Well, most heat pumps are probably 15 to 18 years if they're maintained properly. We've changed units out that are 10, 12 years old where they had a compressor failure, and a lot of we recommend at least once a year maintenance on a heat pump so that we can make certain the refrigerants properly amount of refrigerant in it, because that's what does the work in the winter time as well as summer. If you don't have the right amount of refrigerant in it, then it's not going to heat properly, or it's not going to cool either. So and then we check to make certain the filters are properly maintained, and your condenser coil needs to be clean, because that's the outdoor coil. If it's real dirty, then it's not going to transfer the heat energy from outside, because the air from outside circulates through that coil, and it picks up the heat and brings it in through that refrigerant system. And as well as in the summertime, it's that same condenser coil is serving to reject the heat that you're taking out of the home and dispersing it to the outside air. So if that coil is dirty, then you're not going to be able to get a good heat transfer. Yes, sir?
Is on your solar technology, is it applicable to existing systems, or is it just engineered for your systems? And second question is, what's the cost saving to the homeowner or commercial business?
The panel, the solar panel, can be retrofitted to existing equipment.
Because some people may like this technology, because I just now put in a new 10-SEER system at my house, but I'm a huge supporter of solar energy. I've done a lot of projects with the Department of Energy on solar projects. With my system, could this be retrofitted for my system?
Well, it could be, but if you have a 10-SEER unit, it wouldn't be necessarily compatible, because there's a lot of controls and everything that have to be added to the outdoor heat pump unit. So
they're more specific to your systems that you.
Well, now if you can, we apply that solar panel to like a rooftop air conditioning unit. Now it can be applied there, but when you're dealing with a heat pump, it takes some extra controls in order to make it work. But those panels can be used to retrofit AC units.
What kind of cost savings is on a homeowner if using this technology just versus having a split system?
Well, with the solar tax credit, we have 3 jobs going right now that they're going to get a 30% tax credit for the whole installation. This includes all the excavating, all the equipment, labor, ductwork, everything that makes that system will qualify for that 30% tax credit.
As far as utility bills, though, have you all got any numbers or anything of cost savings?
Well, you're probably, because we're coupling that up with a 16 to an 18 SEER air source heat pump, and then you also have the ground source. involved with it, as well as the solar panel. So you're probably in the, I'd say 30% savings over just an air source unit. Because you're using a lot of the technology at different points of the operation, and that all coupled together, it really makes a
So
nice
it-
savings.
Probably pays for itself in a few years, then, doesn't it?
Right, uh-huh.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a lot of technologies, the upfront cost costs more, but, you know, your savings per year will soon mount up. And the system like this is gonna last at least 20 years and maybe a little bit longer than that.
Is this smart panel, I'm sorry to keep asking a lot of questions.
No, that's fine.
Is this smart panel, only specific to heating and air systems versus just a regular solar panel that you can hook to your grid at your house
Well, yeah, because that, we're circulating refrigerant through that panel.
through this panel?
Uh-huh.
Okay.
And it has vanes to where it follows the sun, so it maximizes the solar gain that it's getting. So that's another difference between that panel and just a solar panel.
Are you able to share what kind of cost is associated with this, with a normal system compared to your all system?
Well, the system we have down in Culloden, the overall cost of that was about $27,000.
Is it commercial?
No, it's residential.
Okay.
If that same system was put in and just a high efficiency air source heat pump, it would have probably been about $15,000. So that's the cost difference.
But then they're getting the 30% tax break,
Right.
but also 30% savings on their utilities, correct?
Uh-huh. Right.
Okay.
So the
it-
30%.
So over a period of time, it will be a cost savings to the homeowner.
Mhm.
And what's the life expectancy of those panels?
They're,
I
I'd
have
say at
reasons
least
for all my
25
questions,
years.
I'm sorry.
Huh?
I have reasons for all my questions.
Oh,
That's good.
no, that's
Questions
fine.
are good.
I-
He asks what he
You know,
wants.
we haven't been in stock, but I would think that at least a 25-year lifespan on
What's the warranty on it?
it. They're 5 years.
5-year warranty.
Mhm.
That covers parts, labor, everything?
Uh-huh.
You've got Jerry, the air expert here. He's got a cartoon character made after him and everything. So this is the guy to
Ask
ask.
the air expert.
Ask the air expert. He does a whole series. So if you got any questions, this is the guy to ask right here.
So the cost on the panel alone is around 25,000, or that's the whole system overall?
That's the whole system, the one that I'm using as an example in Culloden.
What if you had to replace just that technology smart panel?
No, I'm not quite following you there.
Yeah, I mean, if
Just the
something goes
solar?
wrong with the panel after
Solar
5 years, how much is the solar panel just to replace?
The solar panel probably is, I think, around the $5,000–6,000 range. But now, you know, the way it's made, you wouldn't be replacing the whole panel. It'd just be parts, actually.
It's like replacing your roofing, kind of. It's sections. You take sections out, like your roofing, right?
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Now this, so far, we've put the panels out on a slab or treated material out in the yard.
Mm-hmm. Oh, cool.
Just mount them on the roof.
How many square foot home was that you put that system in that?
About 3,000 square feet.
And that price included ductwork and all right there?
Uh-huh.
The whole system?
Right. Yeah, the ductwork and everything's completely redesigned.
I'm hearing talk about new schools that they're building, putting in geothermal heating and cooling. Could you talk about that? Or
Right. You know, there's a lot of, in geothermal, there's what we call a direct exchange geothermal, meaning that we're exchanging the heat energy through the ground, in the ground, with a refrigerant. And that's what this system is about. And then there's also a water source geothermal, where you drill wells or you have loops that are horizontally placed in the ground that would give you, you would circulate a water glycol through it, and then that transfers the heat energy from the ground to the refrigerant. Same principle, but it uses two different ways of delivering that energy from the ground to the building. But yeah, there's quite a bit happening with geothermal.
Seems like it's not catching on as quick as the solar panels,
Well, the upfront cost is still significant, and that's probably one of the reasons. In this area, now down in Kentucky, a lot of the other areas they're doing quite a bit of geothermal. Hey,
I've known Jerry for about 6 years, and he has done a lot of commercial buildings that I'm aware of, and he has saved these businesses thousands, we don't talk about $1,000, we talk about thousands of dollars. He's honest, he's trustworthy, he's got good man, he's got fantastic products, so I would recommend his business to Jerry personally to anybody that is looking to do anything like that.
Mm.
thank you, Pam.
Yeah.
Any other questions?
I heard that too.
Change from a regular 1-inch filter to the larger filter, what's the estimated cost of refitting the unit? Because you gotta,
That could vary, a good bit. As far as the frame and everything that houses
I
that,
can't see the clock on my phone. So.
you're in the $200 range. But depending on what type of ductwork would have to be altered, you could, I would think you could probably retrofit something at $400 to $500, I would think.
Any more questions?
But this is something that we install as a standard filter on all of our systems, because I'm a firm believer in not only designing the system to make the filter accessible, but then if this isn't used, then we use multiple filters to be able to give more square inches of filtering, and that is worth its weight in gold as far as I'm concerned. And then, designing and sealing the ductwork to where you're not picking up outside air and, because it's not rocket science to install a duct system properly, but there's very few people out there that are doing it because they just want to hurry up and get the job done and not worry about leaks. And I think as an average, there's probably about 30% leakage in ductwork.
wow.
You mentioned it affecting your health and how important it is to have a good system because of your health. Can you expand on that a little bit?
About
Your health and having a good system?
Well, yeah,
benefits.
because if you size the system right, then it's going to dehumidify like it should, and that's going to reduce mold, because you're not going to have mold unless you have moisture. And air conditioning, all air conditioning is a big dehumidifier. So it has to be sized to where it will run long enough to dehumidify properly. A lot of people think bigger is better, but when it comes to air conditioning, it needs to be sized to where it will run and pull the humidity out. And if it doesn't do that, then you're going to feel like you're living in a cave, cold and clammy. As far as the health benefits of being able to filter the air 24/7, most central heating cooling systems have the capability of running your fan constantly. And everybody that has central heating cooling has that feature. It's just very few people use it. But if you have good filtering system and use it to circulate your air constantly, I think it's one of the best things you can do to you know, to maintain good air quality.
Well, thank you. Does anybody else have any more questions? Okay,
I just
George
wondered
has
if
got.
you've ever seen an engineering study on the cost benefits for a school system to run the air conditioning through the summer so they don't end up spending a bunch of dollars removing mold when school starts again.
No, I can't say that I have, but that's a very legitimate reason to do that. Because when you turn the air conditioning off, like in this building, everything is a hydroscopic material. It's gonna soak that moisture up. You know, the drywall, the ceiling tile, everything is gonna just, it's like a sponge. So, and you know, if it's just sits there, and the more moisture it gets, and the summers that we've been having, it's terrible. I mean, your temperature's in the 95 degree, and relative humidity's in the 70 to 80%. I don't know what the cost savings would be, but I would think it'd be significant.
Yeah,
You
I would say
factored
so.
in everything. And the health, you know, it costs a lot of energy to, if it's shut down, once you turn it back on, that unit's really gotta work all that moisture out.
Yeah, and all that affects your sinuses and your sinuses. If you've got anything issues with your sinuses, that can affect you in so many different ways.
Uh-huh.
So, well, thank you. Is there anybody else? Any other questions? Can you hold this for a second? Hang on. Well, thank you, Jerry.